I thought I'd actually ask somebody, what would the audience like to hear about on the topic of deepfakes? So, Brian, what do you think?
Well, Brian, I would think that people would like to know about the different types of deepfakes that are out there and how they are being used by malicious threat actors, don't you?
So, okay then, Brian, I think I'll do that. So, the rise of deepfakes, is it all, yeah, it's entertainment, but should we really worry about it? Should we be worried about it? Well, according to studies from last year, deepfakes are now occurring at a rate of about 1 every 5 minutes across the globe, and that rate is increasing. And already deepfakes are accounting for about 40% of all biometric fraud. So there's no doubt that these new tools, deepfakes, AI, generated content, is causing a major issue in the market and is only going to continue and grow as the tools get even more sophisticated. Just to give an example of, even just last month, ByteDance released their Omnihuman 1 model, where you can take a still image and create a very lifelike video. Here's one of Einstein during a lecture in Vienna in 1921, and fed it into the Omnihuman 1 model, and it creates this.
What would art be like without emotions? It would be empty. What would our lives be like without emotions? They would be empty of values. So a famous classical poet said, "We hate and we love. Can one tell me why?" Catullus. Science does not answer why questions.
So as you can see now, the tools and the generation is getting very sophisticated in terms of head movement, arm movement, and way beyond that in terms of realistic backgrounds and beyond. So let's start by kind of defining what a deepfake is. So it's synthetic media. It can be images, video, audio, and text created using deep learning techniques in order to generate realistic impersonations. And it often includes a combination of methods, such as video, voice, images, to generate a realistic representation. This is like an evolution beyond just your traditional cheap fakes where you're just maybe narrowing the lens of a video to try and portray something. So it's actually generating fake media. So what is their purpose? The prime purpose of a deepfake is to impersonate someone's identity. And it can be used for a whole variety of purposes within that. So you impersonate an identity. It can be for amusement. It can be for entertainment. And we see a lot of that online. We saw a lot of it earlier. It can be used for distributing disinformation, for conducting fraud, inflicting reputational damage on peoples or entities or organizations. It can be used for social engineering, as we heard a lot about this morning. It can also be used to bypass authentication methods as well. And ultimately, all the same outcomes that threat actors are looking for: to steal data, credentials, conduct fraud, and just be a step in the attack chain in terms of social engineering. All of those purposes can be the ultimate goal of identity impersonation through the use of deepfakes. So there's kind of four main primary vectors of the misuse of deepfakes. So in digital communications, fake video, audio, and messaging, which I'm going to cover all of these in a moment. A biometric authentication, so fooling face and voice authentication mechanisms that might have been built. As you know, in recent years, there's been a lot of adoption of biometrics in terms of authenticating people, and deepfakes can be used to bypass those mechanisms. Influence operations, fake online videos, and fake audio and overdubs. And even in things like applications, submissions, processes, onboarding of identities into account creations of all different types, deepfakes are becoming much more prominent in this day and age. So quickly on each of these, the first being the deepfakes in digital communications, as I mentioned, video, audio, messaging. I think of it as social engineering 2.0, and that's effectively what it is. It's about representing an identity in the digital sphere that isn't the true identity of what's being portrayed. And it's starting with audio. It's so easy now to clone a voice. Here is a webinar that I did last year on threat exposure management. This content is available online. Here's me talking about the attack chain.
And the most important thing I think to think about exposure management is that attackers chain exposures to build attack paths within your environment. We're all familiar with that.
I won't play the whole webinar because it's 45 minutes long, but it's so easy then to download this content, extract the audio, put it through voice cloning software, and then once you've cloned the voice, you can make literally that voice say anything. So here's me speaking a bit of poetry.
I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze.
So I never uttered those words. That's completely generated by the voice clone. I played it for my family last night, and they said it was very, very realistic. So the good thing is that I now speak fluently 17 languages. So if you now want to hear Wordsworth in Italian.
Vagavo solitario come una nuvola che galleggia in alto sopra valli e colline, quando all'improvviso vidi una folla, una schiera di narcisi dorati, accanto al lago, sotto gli alberi, svolazzanti e danzanti nella brezza.
I actually shared that with an Italian colleague during the week, and he said the Italian was better than his own Italian. So I won't torture you with French, Swedish, Japanese, etc., but they're all there. So what's the use cases for all of this cloned audio? Well, a voice message from someone you trust, your boss, your partner, anyone at all who's purporting to be a different identity. Audio messaging, on the likes of WhatsApp and things like that. Live audio conversations. Off-camera conferencing. How many conference calls have we been on where someone says, "Oh, my camera's playing up today, so I'm going to stay off camera," but they're still on the audio. And also in combination with video deepfakes as well. And it is possible to lip sync cloned audio with video as well. So then now you're getting into the whole realm of a very realistic video with audio cloned together. Now if you move into the likes of video real-time communications, Marcella this morning talked about the high-profile case last year with erode, and they went public with the issue, so there's no issue in mentioning their name. So I won't repeat everything that was said earlier, but effectively they were defrauded out of $25 million. It started with some messaging where the employee in Hong Kong was in communications with their CEO and our CFO and was requested to transfer some money, and they were very dubious, but then they got pulled onto a video conferencing call with many of the colleagues, including the CFO, and by the end of that believed that it was a genuine instruction and went on to transfer 25 million to 5 different bank accounts. So what we know about it is that the threat actors used publicly available video footage of staff members and created a deepfake video and audio, a bit like what I just did there. Pre-generated clips played in real time, multiple AI-generated personas, and so forth. And also all your typical social engineering tactics were used as well. So you don't hear many of these type of high-profile video multi-party conferencing scams, but Obviously, there are examples. There will be more examples that we haven't heard about, and you can be sure that those will only increase in frequency as the tools and the techniques get more sophisticated. Messaging is another one. Attackers masquerading as legitimate authority figures with urgent requests, luring employees to take some action. And messaging is always like a step in the chain, potentially, or used in combination with other deepfakes. Like, for example, there might be messaging, but then followed on by a voice message, and all convincing the target victim that this is the genuine article. There was a case last year with Ferrari targeted by deepfakes. The CEO was targeted, and they started again with messaging, moved to audio, wanted to transfer money, and ultimately the CEO got suspicious and asked a question about a book recommendation that the person had made only the previous week, and the purported CEO couldn't answer the question, so they managed to avoid the scam. We've also, ourselves at Integrity 360, we've had an executive targeted like this, and also with a similar methodology, and managed to avoid falling foul of it. Moving on down to influence operations. So influence operations is about a viral spread of misinformation, fake news, and behaviors, really to target some sort of an agenda. So loads of examples, we hear about it all the time in the political sphere, but it isn't necessarily just limited to that. And the creation of video deepfakes now is getting more and more sophisticated. You've got your face swaps, like there on the left-hand side, where an individual can superimpose the actions that they have onto a different face, and basically look like that person is making those gestures. You've also got now the advent, like the example I gave just recently, or at the start of the presentation with Einstein, where there's fully generative models now that can be trained to produce very realistic images and videos of faces. Just recently now, there's also coming out identity preserving video generation. So for example, a few examples here where there's you just provide the model with an image and then give it some text instructions about what scene you want to create. And first one there, young boy, brown hair, crouching by a stream, all the instructions, and then it automatically generates that identity in that scene. So you can imagine the power, how this could be used in all sorts of ways, both in terms of misinformation, as well as in social engineering type activity. Another one about elder gentleman with a beard on a bicycle, mountains behind them, and then voila, you get the video. A little girl dressed up in a green and yellow dinosaur costume, even down to the color of the sofa that's behind. And then a man walking with a steaming cup of coffee, taking an occasional sip. I think the key thing here is it's not just a verbal instruction, but also the mapping of the identity into that scene, I think, is what really is the power here. And also now there's not only an individual subject, but you can actually do multi-subject to video generation. So you can give a couple of images, text instruction of the scene you want to create, and the video gets automatically generated. Same for the next one, tri-parties discussing a maths problem in front of a blackboard, and it generates it. So you can imagine the type of misinformation, fake news that you could spread. You could just put two people together in a scene, maybe having a covert discussion in a shady cafe somewhere, and then spread that as viral misinformation. When you combine the lip syncing and the video generation, you can effectively get anybody to say anything. If you go online and do just a quick Google search, you will find dozens of tools out there that in a few minutes with an image and a bit of voice, you can actually get anybody to say anything. When you combine that with the voice cloning, then you get that in that person's voice.
I wandered lonely as a cloud that
Me
floats
again,
on high
waxing
o'er
lyrical
vales
on
and
poetry.
hills. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze.
And again, I never said that. I deny it. So there's lots of impacts of disinformation. It's a huge impact if it targets an individual. It can really impact your reputation, your career. You can get doxxed. You can suffer physical online intimidation, threats, and that can actually turn into real violence against an individual. This is not just a political sphere. For-profit enterprises can also have their brand significantly damaged. That can ultimately result in impacts on stock price, market value, and customer defection and brand perception. And organizations can be targeted by, malicious criminal competitors, or just for the hell of it, someone just wants to do it and they do it. There could be hacktivists who have a bugbear against the organization. There's lots of reasons why it can happen. So it's not like, I know we think of it in terms of influencing elections, and obviously that is a big factor, but it's by no means the only one. And then even if you're a non-profit, it can really impact your public support and opinion, your political support, funding, volunteers, and cooperation with other entities as well. So there's a lot of impact that can happen from the use of this type of deepfake. The next one is around biometric authentication use cases. So automatic voice recognition is used quite a bit now in customer contact centers, in financial institutions, in some service desks, and in some mobile applications. And these types of processes and authentication use cases are threatened by deepfake audio, using cloned voices and text-to-speech conversion. And then on the voice side, automatic biometric face recognition is becoming more and more common. I mean, a lot of us have it on our user devices, on our Windows machines, on our mobile phones. And these are threatened by deepfake attacks. And there are two kind of main types of deepfake attacks in terms of face recognition, biometric authentication. Presentation attacks is where someone just puts something in front of the camera, like an image or a screen video that's moving, because a lot of these processes look for a live activity, but you can fake that with a screen. The other type is injection attacks that are injected directly into the stream. So there isn't actually using a physical camera. It's actually injecting, it's purporting to be a camera on the device, but it's not actually a camera. Or it's, and even more sophisticated is a network injection where they actually just inject the traffic into the network, even though there isn't anything physically on the device. We're actually seeing this a lot now in interview fraud, where threat actors are interviewing remotely for positions at companies to infiltrate them, and using network injection and virtual cameras to pretend to be someone else that they're not in order to get hired by the company. And we've seen that escalate a lot in recent times ourselves. And then the final area, applications, submissions, processes, identity fraud and deepfakes is on the rise. In applications in KYC processes, we had know your customer to verify a true identity, got up from, up to around 49-50% of cases in both audio and video over the last 2 years. And they use similar approaches. Presentation, injection attacks, often used in conjunction with stolen and faked doctored IDs. And digital forgery has increased 17x in the last 3 years, because AI is actually helping with digital forgery as well. And they can be used both to steal someone's identity and then use it for other purposes, and also create synthetic identities that don't even exist, but then can go on and take out a loan and then disappear, for example. So I've given you all the doomsday, all the things, the bad things that can happen. So just to finish up with, what are the recommendations around this? Rich talked this morning about people, process, and technology. We can't get away from that. It's all of those things. Social engineering 2.0, it's just a more advanced form of social engineering to use deepfakes. Stay aware and vigilant. Keep the people informed and up to date on what is the art of the possible in the modern world. Evaluate your processes and see how vulnerable they are to these techniques, and how robust they are to deepfake social engineering. So any critical controls, any critical transactions you make, whether they're financial or adding payees, sharing sensitive data, test those processes and make sure they're robust and make them stronger in the face of these threats, and also test them. So don't just do your regular email phishing tests. Test the use of deepfakes in these situations as well. And also, MFA has never been more important, because now we can't necessarily rely completely on the biometric indicators. So combine biometric and non-biometric methods in your multi-factor authentication. Monitor for brand and VIP misuse and disinformation online, on social media, online, people impersonating your brand, phishing websites, and have a response plan in place if you're a subject of a disinformation campaign. Have a response plan. The same way you have a cybersecurity response plan, you should also have a disinformation response plan as well. And improve your identity verification tools and processes to mitigate those types of attacks, those presentation attacks, those injection attacks. Make sure whoever what technologies you're using for identity verification is up to date with some of these latest techniques. And I know we've been talking about zero trust for a long time, but zero trust never been more important, because if someone successfully bypasses the authentication and gets into your environment, then at least if you've adopted least privilege, they can only do what they've been authenticated to do, and continuously verify means that they will continually have to bypass those mechanisms in order to remain within the environment and do what they want to do. So really, you have to be like a detective. You have to be a detective to spot these things and know where are the clues. So I thought I'd finish up by bringing in a detective just to give us a bit of a recommendation. Final word on detecting deepfakes.
Thank you for attending Integrity 360's Security First conference. I hope you found the talk informative. In honour of the upcoming St. Patrick's Day celebration, I've written a limerick advising how to spot a deepfake before you are tricked. I do hope you like it. A deepfake may fool at first sight, but Integrity 360 shines light. If the lips lag behind or the voice misaligns, then Watson says, security first, quite right. And now I'll hand you back to my trusty assistant, Brian. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much.